The Florida Panthers look to be a playoff lock with 30 points in 24 games. On today's show, we are going to discuss the last two games for the Florida Panthers and how Paul Mauice's forward thinking is only going to help this hockey club.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, December 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at MonoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So, Cats fans, it's great to be back. And as if you heard last week, actually 2 weeks ago on the Thursday on the Thanksgiving episode, there wasn't going to be many episodes last week for this show as I was traveling. I actually went on vacation, and my mental batteries are mostly recharged after some time away as well, and getting some rest as well, and of course seeing some family out of the state of Florida. And thankfully we were able to do two shows, watched the games on demand from Ottawa and Toronto, and then now being back in Florida, all caught up. I'm not going to record a podcast until I watch the recent games for the Panthers, just to get myself all caught up and then to discuss it as well. So that's why you didn't have an episode after Winans Wednesday last week. So all caught up and really ready to hit December head on, honestly, for this podcast, as well as we are getting ready to hit another benchmark for the NHL season, which is the new calendar year of 2024, as the Florida Panthers finished November 10-4-1. So let's discuss Thursday night's game between the Florida Panthers and the Montreal Canadiens, as the Montreal Canadiens were on the second end of a back-to-back. Sam Montembeault started on Wednesday night for the Canadiens. They had Caden Primo in the net for the Montreal Canadiens on Thursday night against the Florida Panthers. And it's crazy, with a lot of teams have three goalies on their roster. Will the Montreal Canadiens have three goalies by the time the trade deadline hits? Maybe not. Maybe Jake Allen is traded at the trade deadline, maybe to the Edmonton Oilers coming up, who need a goaltender. Maybe Sam Montembeault just got extended over the weekend, so maybe that's when it comes to the goalie situation for the Montreal Canadiens, maybe we might see something different as far as this franchise next time the Florida Panthers do see them, which will be actually later in the month. But as far as this game for the Florida Panthers, they were pretty sloppy with their positioning and all that. Nico Mikkola went to the box twice and all that. And even on their PK, they had multiple 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s. And OEL spoke after the first period about how they can be a little better in their D zone and all. And even with it being 0-0 after one, you felt like the Florida Panthers, their legs were going. They were up in transition as well for this game as well. They got up, but it wasn't for a lack of effort as well for the Florida Panthers, really, especially after you felt on Tuesday that you could have had all 4 points, but you ended up having 3 in the back-to-back in Ottawa and Toronto as well. But the defensive game for the Florida Panthers really stepped up as well. Barkov on that 4-on-4 goes the distance. What Jameson Olive described it was as a pick six, intercepts a pass from point to point and goes by himself and beats Primo glove side. You're going to see a theme here in segment number 1 when it comes to discussing the 5-1 victory for the Florida Panthers over the Montreal Canadiens. And also, Florida Panthers, they first 2 power plays were a total of 23 seconds because the Montreal Canadiens, they went on the power play, and then one of them being 20 some odd seconds as before they commit a penalty, and then 3 seconds into a faceoff where Cole Caulfield trips Gus Forsling off a faceoff, and you eliminate the opportunities for the opposition to get any offensive zone time while you're on the PK. And hey, that helped the Florida Panthers as far as their PK percentage as well. So as far as the streak that they went on, which ended at 26 of 26, we'll get more of that later before in segment number 2 for the Islanders game as well. And it's crazy because Gus Forsling on that first penalty that the Panthers took, he was a step away from Josh Anderson being awarded a penalty shot. One more step, and Josh Anderson has a penalty shot there as well. And if you love defense, Thursday night's game was your game. I mentioned Barkov earlier. Eetu Luostarinen was great getting his stick in the way and closing in gaps on the night on the Montreal Canadiens, really on Thursday night as well. And even after the second period, Sam Reinhart spoke about how the second chance opportunities, you want to get your insurance goals. You want to break it open on a team that you have their number over the last few years. The Panthers were 1 goal away from the last year from the average being 7 goals 4 against the Montreal Canadiens last season, 27 goals in 4 matchups, and then you get 5 here. But it wasn't easy for the Florida Panthers as far as getting the pucks out in front. But the thing is, the Panthers, as far as their goal scoring, didn't really need to get out in front of the net in front of Caden Primo. And there was a theme, like I said, there was a theme here. A lot of them coming to the left side for the Panthers. All of them came from the left side, and all of them actually came from not only the left side, but they beat Caden Primo glove side too. And what a momentum shift it was for the Florida Panthers as far as immediately going into the third. You win a faceoff. All eyes are on Carter Verhaeghe. He chips it up the boards. They lose Sam Bennett. Drives towards the left side and beats Primo glove side there. Erod later gets it from the top of the circle in transition after a pretty great drop by Sam Reinhart, for as a lot of eyes are on Sam Reinhart. I mean, Sam Reinhart had 16 goals on the season. There's a reason for that as well. Verhaeghe gets one as well. He's on a 2. He's scored again on Saturday as well. And it's crazy because even the one goal against that Bobrovsky had trickles off the glove and in. And it's like, oh man, you could have had 2 straight games with a shutout for Sergei Bobrovsky, and just one goal that trickles by is just it's just you wish you could have that back. But hey, Sergei Bobrovsky's not going to complain about getting a win, and OEL getting one with 10.1 left. And all of them go glove side for the Florida Panthers on the night as well. And Bob, 21 of 22 on the night. Verhaeghe, Erod, and Barkov each having 1 point as well. Barkov, he has 43 points in 32 career games against the Montreal Canadiens in his career. I know we spoke about the hat trick last year in his first game back from an illness, and then the hat trick a few years ago that he had, and especially that highlight reel goal that he had on Carey Price between the legs, and goes top shelf on that. And just Barkov historically has just owned the Montreal Canadiens and just loves playing them and all. And just also we do want to wish speedy recovery to Alex Newhook, who crashed into the net and his skate got caught from behind. You just don't want to see that in this sport. And hopefully that Alex Newhook out 10 to 12 weeks for him. You don't want to see that as well for him. So hopefully he is recovering quite fast. It's not season ending for him, but that was a scary moment in the game on Thursday night. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where the Florida Panthers did welcome the New York Islanders home, coming off their 5 out of 6 game points on their Eastern Canadian road trip, but did have they did stumble a bit when they returned home on Saturday. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. And a new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Sam Reinhart could win the Rocket Richard and get 50 goals. The Panthers could hoist the Stanley Cup. And you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy contests. And all you have to do is pick whether studs like Sam Reinhart, Matthew Tkachuk, Connor McDavid, Alex Ovechkin, Alexander Barkov, Sidney Crosby, and Nathan McKinnon, if they will record more or less their sleeper projections like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game, you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Use code LOCKEDONHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for detail and locational availability. Locked On has officially launched its first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel and on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever 24/7 streaming channel. Segment number 2 here on this Monday, December 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. So the Florida Panthers return home against the New York Islanders. This is, you look at this game and you look even before and you see, oh, no Matthew Barzal, their best goal scorer. And Adam Pelech is on LTIR, which is the reason why they claimed Mike Riley in the first place for defensive depth. And good for Mike Riley. He's getting some playing time when he wasn't getting a lot of it in Sunrise. Only 2 games for the Florida Panthers in his very, very short career for the Panthers. Return home. They went 10-4-1 in the month of November. 5 out of 6 points on the road trip. 4th best points percentage in the league. Most wins in the NHL with 10. Third in the NHL in goals against and PK percentage. So just beautiful month of November to set the Florida Panthers up nicely. And we'll discuss more about how they're set up nicely. Segment number 3. And really, this game was not lost, in my opinion. It was not lost in the first 10 minutes. Yeah, the Florida Panthers were 7-0 in shots on goal in the first 10. And even when the New York Islanders scored 1-0 on the power play, where did that goal feel like a kick in the nuts? Absolutely. It absolutely did, because it's right off a faceoff. Brock Nelson chips it up the boards, and then Anders Lee is there for a redirection immediately after faceoff. 2 of the goals by the New York Islanders came on set plays off of faceoff as well. And this is the thing. As great as Anthony Stolarz has been, he's not Sergei Bobrovsky. And the thing is, big frame really helps Anthony Stolarz as far as stopping pucks, but size is not going to help you with rebound control for Stoli. And he knows that. The team knows that, and the Panthers, they've been known that. We know that now, as far as Stoli as well for that. And for this one, you think if Ilya Sorokin was not between the pipes, the Florida Panthers maybe could have had maybe like 5 or 6 goals on this one. And the deserve to win meter based on Money Puck had the Florida Panthers at 70%. But if 3 stars of the game could go to one player, you're thinking Ilya Sorokin with 42 of 45 saves on the night on Saturday as well. And it's funny because the Florida Panthers had multiple stretches where they were just dominating the possession. We spoke about 7-0 as far as shots on goal to even start the game. The first shot didn't even come until the midway through the first. But it really came down to the real missed opportunities when Ilya Sorokin gave up an open net. There's one on the power play where Erod missed the net on a redirection late in the first, and that's where you say, ooh, maybe that's where the game was lost for the Panthers here as well. And also another another thing for the Panthers is we spoke about Sam Reinhart speaking in between in the second intermission on Thursday against the Montreal Canadiens about how the Panthers were not getting enough bodies up in front to make on Thursday, Caden Primo uncomfortable. It wasn't happening on Saturday against Ilya Sorokin. And Ilya Sorokin and Caden Primo are two different type of beasts. Ilya Sorokin is likely going to be a Vezina Trophy candidate this season. He is going to be every year, and they have a great two-headed monster in goal with Sorokin and Varlamov there. But it felt like the same old song and dance, just like how Aerosmith says it in their song as well. And the opportunities had to be there, and that redirection by Erod that just hits the post. That's really where you're thinking, oh man, I hope this doesn't come back to bite the Panthers as well. And we spoke about the rebound control of Anthony Stolarz and all, and it's you think about the second goal by the New York Islanders, that gave them the 2-1 lead, and then the Florida Panthers, they were trying to catch the New York Islanders in a change, failed to catch them in a change, and then on the counter attack, Holmstrom scores on, guess what, a rebound. So that's that, and not enough red jerseys there on Saturday night to clear the puck, and as well for Anthony Stolarz to help him out. And there are still some good, however, to take out of that loss. You get 0 out of 2 points, yeah, but the Panthers outmuscling them for a lot of the game, and you saw it on when Sam Bennett and Ryan Pulock were battling in the corner, and puck goes loose. Verhaeghe says thank you, gets it to Matthew Tkachuk, and scores on a wrister, and that breaks a 10-game goalless streak for Matthew Tkachuk. And Matthew Tkachuk does have 3 points out of the last in his last 10, but still, it's great to see that Tkachuk gets that one to make it 3-2 at the time. And think about another missed opportunity. The Florida Panthers, going into the third period, they draw a penalty, and what happened before? The Florida Panthers, the New York Islanders iced the puck. They got tired bodies. It's towards the end of the second period where, yeah, you're gonna get 15-ish minutes of rest, so you get your matchup that necessary in your own zone, and you immediately get a shot off the faceoff on the power play, and you start with a minute 58 of power play time going into the third period. And then another real missed opportunity for the Panthers was when Matthew Tkachuk had the puck. There's a centering feed to Sam Bennett on the power play, which Sam Bennett's been in and out of power play one recently, but there was a centering feed to Sam Bennett in right on the doorstep, and there's 3 white jerseys around, and that was where you wanted Matthew Tkachuk there to be maybe a little selfish there, and maybe you're going back to the penalty that was drawn from second going into third. You're kind of licking your chops there a little bit for the Panthers, because you know how you performed at the third period. The third period has been your best period of the season. The New York Islanders have had one of the worst third periods in the NHL. They're minus 16 as well. The New York Islanders have lost a lot of games in overtime. They're 2-6 to be exact, as well. So don't let Ilya Sorokin's record fool you as well. But you're kind of looking at the same time, you're licking your chops because their top goal scorer is out as well. So you get 8 shots in the first 3 minutes. Fourth line gets 3 in the same shift and 2 off rebound opportunities too. And you still can't get anything through Ilya Sorokin. And it's just I hate using the term goal lead. I hate using that term, but we saw that in on Saturday night. The difference between Caden Primo being on the top of his crease and Ilya Sorokin is you're not going to see Sorokin being beat easily from that from that on that glove, especially as well. And with and after, man, you got to give credit to New York Islanders. They had the lead for 4-3, and I said earlier about the New York Islanders scoring immediately off of faceoffs, the one that basically put the game uh, not in doubt for the New York Islanders. Gauthier get immediately after faceoff goes on a one timer after Bo Horvat wins a faceoff as well. That was going to be an incredibly tough hill to climb for the Florida Panthers there. Uh, even though coming into this game, the New York Islanders were one of the worst teams as far as PK percentage. Crazy to think that a team that went to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals uh, can fall this much from that. But at the same time, it's a product of the general manager, Lou Lamoriello, keeping the same guys and not getting any younger too. So that's another thing for it. But they still have two world-class goaltenders, probably a top two tandem in the league, along with Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark in Boston as well. And yeah, the Panthers cut it to 1, where Aaron Ekblad stops not one, but 2 breakout passes, and then Carter Verhaeghe scores on a rebound after Ekblad tees it off to Gus Forsling. Verhaeghe scores on a rebound, 11th goal of the season. Carter Verhaeghe is still scoring at an incredibly high rate, and the Panthers are very, very fortunate to have that on the cheap for at least the next couple of seasons as well. And 2 points, missed opportunity, especially on the power play. That was really how the Panthers really lost this one, because 45 shots. A lot of times you're going to win, but at the same time, when you're not making the opposition uncomfortable with second chance opportunities against a Vezina Trophy caliber goaltender, you're going to lose a lot of games as well. Thankfully, the Panthers only play the New York Islanders 3 times this season, so we don't have to worry about that so much as well. But in segment number 3, we are going to discuss more about Paul Maurice's forward thinking and how that's going to help the Florida Panthers as they approach the new calendar year. We're going to discuss that and more here on Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And when you're drafting a fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you could do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, Assessment, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. And Indeed knows when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Segment number 3 here on this Monday, December 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. And a few injury updates as far as the Florida Panthers, as far as their practice schedule as well. The Panthers are off today. They will have an 11 a.m. practice at the Coral Springs Ice Den on Tuesday, December 5th. And also, based on what I saw on the socials, the Panthers had their Panthers Fest for territory members on Sunday at Amerant Bank Arena. And great to see all the photos of the fans taking pictures with players and all the other different events that the Florida Panthers put together on Sunday at the arena for the fans. Uvis Belinskis was sent down to AHL Charlotte because he has waivers exempt, and then he was recalled on Sunday. Excuse me. So don't know what that means as far as Josh Mahura and him being ready. So we could, if there was a game tonight, you would think that Uvis Balinskis would just be the seventh defenseman and scratched, maybe, or maybe in for Kulikov. We've seen that revolving door around the last pair here and there over the last week and a half and all. But that's a little bit of an update there. And Paul Mauice spoke about how Balinskis really didn't do anything to be sent down. It's just the product of the depth as well, and he needs the pro minutes too. And he's going to get that in Charlotte. And I think that's just a really great opportunity for him. It's funny because even in the first 2 weeks, when Mackey and Justin Sordiff were sent down to the AHL, we were thinking, yeah, they're going to get a lot of playing time. Now we're not even talking about them being called up the rest of right now. I mean, I think the Florida Panthers will be even fine them being there the rest of the season as well. I mean, that's what happens when you're still collecting wins, even when the offensive production as far as goals for isn't necessarily there right now for the team. You're not going to rely on you're not going to ask two rookies to carry your team as far as offensive scoring punch as well for the Panthers in here. But I also wanted to talk about how Paul Maurice's forward thinking is just I said last week how I wonder what Maurice's way of thinking was when he put Bobrovsky against Ottawa and then Stolarz against Toronto last week. And then I think more about the schedule ahead for the Panthers. Think about this. Bobrovsky started Monday, 2 days off, plays against Ottawa. Stolarz starts on Saturday. So that would give Sergei Bobrovsky 5 days off in between between Friday and this Wednesday game coming up against the Dallas Stars, which will be a nationally televised game on TNT. We still don't know who the broadcasting teams are for Wednesday night, but once we know, we will tweet it out from the Locked On Florida Panthers X page and also post it on Instagram as well. The next break of 3 or more games won't be until Christmas. And also there's a roster freeze as well. Let's not also forget that there will also be a roster freeze during that as the players will be with their families for the holiday. And before that, there's only going to be 1 2-day break from here until December 23rd, which will be when the Florida Panthers do return from Western Canada / Columbus, because the Panthers will have a game mixed in there on their 5-game road trip out west. So this is very, very strategic for the Paul Mauice needs to be very strategic as far as how he's going to use his goaltenders as well. And right now, Sergei Bobrovsky has played 18 of the 24 games. That would put him at 75% of the starts. That would put Bob at 61/62 games for the Panthers this season. You would want that number to be down. Obviously, you want to give him more rest and all, but where the rest comes from is going to be key. Looking forward a little bit, I would assume that Bob would get the start against Dallas, against Pittsburgh on Friday, and maybe Stolarz gets the matinee next Sunday, this coming Sunday against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So it's gonna be really, really important. And maybe Stolarz gets the start at the end of the road trip against the Calgary Flames, where you could see Bob starting against Edmonton, and then his next game won't come until that Thursday after, when they return home against the St. Louis Blues as well. So that's a little bit of the forward thinking that Paul Mauice has, is at least predicting how he rests his $10 million man. And the way I compare it is when I think of back in 2016, I'm going to reference another sport real quick. And when Jose Fernandez, rest in peace, Jose, he was coming back from Tommy John surgery, people were wondering why he wasn't starting opening day for the Marlins in 2016. Is Don Mattingly was looking at rest days and for his starting rotation to get an extra day off when you start every 5th day. And based on being the starter on game 2 of the season, that helped him, even though his season, he didn't finish this season, obviously, because of the boating accident that happened. And of course, he's no longer with us, but that was the strategy at the time for that. And you could compare the same thing as far as Sergei Bobrovsky and the way Paul Mauice is looking as far as the rotation here. So that's another way that we can look at this. And right now, like I said at the top in the very beginning before introducing the show, 30 points, 24 games. Do you know where the first team out point pace is at? First team out is the Philadelphia Flyers. 88 point pace that they're on. Last team in is the New York Islanders, who the Florida Panthers just saw. And it's crazy. To get to 92 points for the Panthers would have to play at a points percentage of .530, around there. And it's safe to say, I know you can old takes expose me if the Panthers do miss the playoffs, but on December 4th, I would like to declare the Panthers as a playoff lock. Why? Because even before everything, how the Panthers managed the blue line with depth guys being in, you think about the Kulikovs and the OELs of the world being in the top 4, and now they're your third pair, and now you can switch in and out for a 7th defenseman, and a 7th defenseman who, if you assume is Josh Mahura, was part of a third pair that was in the Stanley Cup final just recently. So it's a great position for the Panthers. And for them, with that, and without Matthew Tkachuk having a productive season offensively, when it's not about if, it's about when he goes on a tear, that's going to be even better for this team as well. So that is another reason why the Panthers are, and you guys listening should feel good about where they go towards the end of the season. I know Barkov has missed a good amount of games due to illness and all, and injury. But also, what Barkov did on that road trip defensively, that breakaway goal, the first one where it was 4-on-4 and he intercepts Lindstrom's pass, that I wrote in my notes in all caps, Selke. And that play in itself, I wish that the NHL could just stop the game and everybody just look on the Jumbotron and just appreciate one of the best two-way forwards in the game. And you, Florida Panthers fans, are very fortunate to watch this guy game in, game out as well. Goaltending is in a great spot. You don't need to call up Spencer Knight. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick for the Florida Panthers, which their farm is ranked outside of the top 20. I believe it was 26. Their preseason ranking was it was number 26 going into the season. But now that you can keep those guys there and have them develop, yeah, I know Spencer Knight has been there for a bit now this season, but the fact that you have those there to get games while the Florida Panthers are competing, this is everything that Bill Zito could possibly ask for. And also, yeah, the Checkers aren't having the best season. They're 10-9-0 on this on the year, but as far as the reps and getting games, that's really what's key for the sort of Spencer Knights and Mackie Samoskiewicz's down there as well. That's really going to be helpful as the NHL team is continuing to create wins. Their blue line is incredible. That they are forcing teams outside. There's time for Bob or Stolars to get the glove down, as far as getting a whistle too. And you gotta be thrilled. And going back to Barkov, he only has 5 goals against at even strength. So that is the defensive hockey that travels. Defensive hockey travels in the postseason. And this, what the Florida Panthers are doing, it travels. So that's why this product right here is absolutely sustainable. And thankfully, as well as Paul Maurice's forward thinking, it can only help the Panthers, at least in my opinion. Thank you so much once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Once again, guys, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the sports stories of the day with local experts on Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.